In this video, I show you how to build a PC inside of the Gamdius Argus M1 PC chassis. Now, this is the perfect video for you guys that don't know how to build PCs and want to learn, or even for those of you that know how to build PCs but want to learn the intricacies of the Gamdius Argus M1. So stick around. Now, before you start building inside of this PC, before you touch your components, I want to say make sure you touch the inside of this chassis to discharge yourself. You don't want to zap any of your components. So let's check it out. So the components I'm going to be putting inside of the case are the EVGA Z370 FTW motherboard, along with the Intel Core i7 8700K processor, the Western Digital Black 512 gig M.2 PCIe NVMe SSD, 32 gigs of Patriot Viper DDR4 RAM, along with the EVGA GeForce RTX 2080 Ultra gaming card, the Samsung 850 EVO 500 gig SSD, along with the Corsair H115i Pro liquid cooling unit. Now, this will take a 280 up at the top, a 360 and a 280 up in the front, and then a 120 in the back. Now, because of the heat sinks, I'm gonna have to mount this guy. Even though it's a 280, it should fit, but because of the heat sink here, I'm gonna have to put it up in the front. I just wanted to preface why I'm gonna put it up in the front, but actually it might actually provide better cooling for the system, because one big thing that I don't like, but you may like, considering most people buy their own, is this case comes with no fans whatsoever. Now, because it doesn't come with any, in the back I'm going to be putting a Corsair 1225L 120 millimeter fan. All right, that's going to be for the back. That's going to be sucking air out of the system, and then intake is going to be the liquid cooling unit. Also, down in the comments and the description below, I'm going to pin everything that I'm using inside of this system in case you guys want to check it out. So anyway, come over here real quick and let's get started. All right, so when building a machine, one of the first things you're going to want to do after you move that CPU cover is you're going to want to install the CPU. The reason I say that is if you bend any of these pins, no motherboard manufacturer is going to take back this motherboard. So you have to be very careful. In order to start, this little lever right over here, we're going to go ahead and push down and out. That way we can release it. And then we're going to go ahead and just slide it back. That's going to go ahead and raise this cover right over here. So you'll notice on the CPU, there's a notch right over here and another little notch right over here. That's going to go ahead and line up with the notch right here on the board and right here on the board. Okay, so that's an easy way to know which way to install it. So then you just go ahead and drop it in place. Okay, after it's in there, just wiggle it a little tiny bit. And if it feels right, just go ahead, put this down. Make sure these little lifts are under here. And then that's going to go ahead and we drop this, slide it down, pull it out, and slide it in just the same way in reverse that we lifted it. All right, so now we don't have to worry so much about that. So now we're going to go ahead and install the DDR4 right over here. Okay, so on this particular chipset, we're going to go ahead and open up DIMM 2 and DIMM 4. That's where we're going to go ahead and install the RAM. Okay, so first off, you're going to notice when you install it, there's a notch right here. That same notch is going to be right over here. Now that helps you so that when you go to install the RAM, you notice the notch is right here, but the notch is right here on the board. So it's just seesawing like that. So if we turn it around, slide it down. Now you're going to notice this right over here, that pops in when we seat it properly. So Okay, so I also pushed it down over here so that it falls in perfectly. And now we'll go ahead and repeat that again, lining up the RAM correctly. All right, so now let's move on to the M.2 SSD. All right, so here is the M.2 SSD socket. Now I'm gonna go ahead and zoom in. You'll notice there's a little thermal pad. That's just to keep it nice and cool. And then along here, you'll notice there's a screw. So we're gonna go ahead and remove that screw. Okay, it's a magnetized tip. That way it's a lot easier to get that screw out. Okay, and now we're gonna go ahead and align the little notch right over here with the notch back here. And we're just gonna go ahead and slide that in. Push it in, it'll slide in relatively easily. And then at this point, we can just drop it in place. Now it goes up really slow because it sticks to that thermal pad. And now we just screw it in. And you can see right there, we've installed the M.2 SSD. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and install the liquid cooling unit. So first off, what we're going to want to do is just flip the board over. Okay, and this is what retains the liquid cooling unit to the CPU socket. So you'll notice this little hole right over here is going to match with this hole right here. So we kind of just drop it into place. And now we just put the board down. Okay, that keeps that back plate correct on the back of the board. Now you can always use temporarily, of course, painter's tape to just keep it on there. One of the biggest debates is how to put the thermal paste. On this particular machine, I'm going to be using Arctic Cooling MX4 thermal compound. Okay, and some people like to smear it on there. I like to put a dab right in the middle because with the pressure from the liquid cooling plate, it's gonna go ahead and move that thermal paste around, spread it evenly. So I'm just gonna put about a pea size right on there. Okay, and then just make sure you put the cap back on so you don't lose any thermal paste. Okay, and now we're gonna go ahead and put these in there. For these, we just drop it right into the screw hole, sorry, and just screw it in with your fingertips. So I'm just gonna go ahead and install all four real quick. Okay, now you're going to put those in just, of course, by hand. You don't need any special screwdriver or anything along those lines. And screw it in firmly, not incredibly tight, just firmly. Okay, and now we're gonna go ahead and put this in its place. So you see there are these holes over here where this threading is gonna fit through. So let me go ahead and move the camera. Okay, so now we're just going to drop this right in place. Okay, and now that it's in, we just push it down. You'll notice the screw comes through here, here, over here, and over here. And I'm just pushing down to evenly spread that paste. Of course, it's going to spread evenly once we screw this in place. So now go ahead and don't screw in all the way, but use the screws that came with the liquid cooling unit to hold down. Again, don't screw them in too tightly. And notice the pattern that I'm screwing them down in. So one over here first, then one over here, then one over here, and then one over here. Okay, now at this point, we can go ahead and screw them down. All right, now that that's in here, we're gonna go ahead and install the liquid cooling unit into the case. Okay, so in order to remove the face of the case, there's gonna be a little hole down here that you can put your fingers through. Hold the top of the case and just pull out quickly. Don't worry, it's not broken. All right, and we're gonna have to remove the rear side panel. That way we can pull it out a little bit more, so one sec. Okay, so now we can just grab these and move them aside just for now. All right, so now that we have the front exposed, the way that the liquid cooling unit is gonna fit is just right over here. Now, we can take these out if we wanted to. We just have to clip right here. You'll see all the sections where these little pieces are actually connected to the case. And just to make sure, yep, so we are safe to remove these. Okay, now that I know where I'm gonna put the liquid cooling unit, I'm gonna go ahead and install the motherboard since we have everything attached. All right, now most people are gonna cringe because I'm building it standing up, but that's the easiest way for me to film. So now what I'm gonna go ahead and do is install the IO shield. Just turning the system around, and we're just going to go ahead, put the IO shield in place. Right there. And just push this through. All right, now everything's in place. All right, so this is an ATX motherboard. Now, we're going to want to make sure that all the standoffs are first in the correct place. And second, if they're missing, we're going to want to go ahead and put the standoffs in. Also, make sure that you don't have extra standoffs. If you have an extra standoff, you could end up shorting your board. So just be very careful. Now, I know this particular motherboard, so there's going to be everywhere there is one right now, but we're missing here, here, and here. And the case does come with 3 standoffs, so I'm just gonna go ahead and screw those standoffs in by hand, as firm as I can get it. Okay, so for the rest, you'll notice there's still some more space. You can screw it in. We'll just grab, for example, needle nose pliers. Now if you have a standoff tool, screwdriver, that's a lot better, but since the case doesn't bring it, I don't want to use anything additional. You want to make sure it's nice and tight, because if it's not, when you're screwing in the screws for the motherboard, and maybe later on you want to take the motherboard out, you might have the screw stuck into the standoff, and the standoff gets screwed off on the board as well, which is not the end of the world. You can always take that off later. It's just a bigger pain. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and grab the motherboard. Drop that just into place for now. And then we're gonna want to put the liquid cooling radiator right in the hole right up here in the front of the case. Now we're just gonna keep that here just for right now until we can get the motherboard situated. Okay, now the case comes with 30 of these screws. So this is a magnetized screwdriver, so it's a little bit easier to work with, especially standing up. Now we want to align the back of the motherboard with the IO shield, and then screw the very first screw in just to keep the board in place. For you building at home, it'll probably be easier, being that you'll be building more than likely the system laying down. But again, it's easier for me to build like this. All right, so now that that's in place, I can let go of the motherboard and just screw the rest of the screws in. One sec. All right, so now we have all of the screws in the motherboard placed in there correctly. Now you may have noticed there is a screw hole right over here that there is no additional standoff for, so I have to leave it empty, but that's okay, that's not gonna cause an issue. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and drop the fans in place one by one and then screw them into the radiator. Sorry, just realized I didn't have my microphone on. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and move the radiator back a little bit. I'm gonna get a little pushback because of the cable back here. And now I'm gonna drop this in place. Now, you can have it in the fan in the front or the fan behind the liquid cooling unit, however you prefer. Now I'm pulling the cable through this hole over here. Okay, now we're going to want to line up the screw holes just to make sure we can install it properly. Okay, and now that looks good right around there. So we are going to have to raise this a little tiny bit. So the easiest way to do it is we put the screw right in here, and then we line it up with the screw on the radiator. See that we're going right over here. And we're just going to screw it in by hand for now, just so that we have a placement. Now we're going to grab the other screw and just do the same by hand for now. All right, and then we'll want to do the same down here. Now the other reason we're not screwing it in completely tight is we still need to fit the fan up top. Okay, now for the last one down here. All right, so now we have a little give there. So we just drop it in like this. All right. Now, since this is a budget case, you'll notice it has a lot more give than other cases, which for this case, or for this install, which I guess it goes with this case, makes it a lot easier to get things in there, since the case bends a little bit more than most cases. All right, now that all the screws are in, I'm gonna go ahead and just screw them all in tightly. All right, so now we have the liquid cooling unit installed up here and here as well. We have the RAM installed, the CPU installed, the motherboard, and the M.2 NVMe SSD. So now we're gonna go ahead and install the fan in the back. Again, we're going to be sucking air out, so we want this to be facing inside the case and the logo to be facing outside of the case. And I'm routing the cable over here. That way I can just route it up here. And actually what I'll do is I'll go ahead and just route it up there now. Now again, since this does not bring a fan, you need to have your own screws with the fan. And luckily, whenever you buy a fan, it comes with those screws as it is. Now you're able to put the fan if you want all the way up or all the way down, but I'm just gonna keep it right in the middle just because it looks nicer to me. Now I would have preferred it to be 140 millimeters, but 120 millimeters still nice. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and install the SSD. All right, so now you're able to install two 2.5 SSDs or two 3.5 inch mechanical drives or SSDs as well, or one 2.5 and one 3.5. So I'm just gonna go ahead and install it right at the very top. So we have this tray here. I'm gonna go ahead and install it this way. That way I can just plug in everything right back here. And for this one, we're gonna go ahead and use the same screws we used for the motherboard. All right, so now that the drive's in, we just slide it in place. So slides in place nicely. And then again, we have a spot for another drive. All right, so now let's install the video card. All right, so I'm just gonna put these aside for right now. I'm gonna raise these tubes just to get them out of the way. All right, and now back here, we'll find they have these screws here holding this in place. Okay, and for the video card, we're going to want to use this screw right over here. Okay, and now so that we don't take off the wrong one, because these are the type that you just kind of rip off, you can never put them back on. They include a few extra. So now let's see exactly where this goes. Okay, so we're gonna remove the second, third, and fourth PCIe slot since this is a triple wide card. Now be careful when doing this because this goes right over the motherboard. You could rip off one of these pieces here. Actually, I'm gonna hold off on the video card first because it's gonna make you guys seeing where I plug in the SATA cable, where I plug in the USB 3.0 cable, and then where I plug in all these other cables down here. So we're gonna go ahead and skip to the power supply. So now we're going to grab our power supply and we're gonna put it in through the rear side of the case. Fan facing down. There's a filter right down here on the bottom of the case, 3/4 into a full inch. So there's plenty of breathing room here. And again, here's the filter. Now you're going to want to, before you put in your power supply, you're going to want to put in all the cables. This is a partially modular power supply. The ones you use the most are already plugged in, and these are the additional ones. Now, since I've used this power supply before, it is an older one, but it works perfectly well. It's a 1200 watt Cooler Master Sident Pro Gold RSC0080GA-D3. It's already got everything I need attached. The other good thing about this case is you'll notice here, 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 and here, they're pieces of rubber so that the power supply does not vibrate too much, causing a lot of noise, needless noise. This looks like it's going to be a tight fit. All right, so now we'll grab the power supply screws. And that is installed. Now, this is what I meant about it being a tight fit. It fits, but there is no way you're going to be able to plug in anything in there after you've installed the power supply. This particular power supply is 7 inches long. Okay, so now when we cable, which is going to be the second part of this video, we're just going to have to route it correctly. Looks like it's going to be a little bit difficult, but not incredibly difficult to figure out. Now, on some power supplies, maybe most, you'll see the logo of the power supply here. Sadly, we can only see a portion of the power supply, but this will help you out a lot, just in case you're trying to troubleshoot an issue and your friend or whoever asks you, hey, what kind of power supply do you have? That way you don't have to pull it out. Now, of course, because we're open over here, we can see what kind of power supply we have as well. So both sides leave you completely open. We do have a power supply shroud, but it doesn't block everything. And then along the top, we can see here that we can still make out a little bit of the power supply here. So we have some room. So now we're gonna go ahead and install the SATA cable right into SATA port 0 right over here. And we're just gonna slide it back here. Careful you don't bend it too much, you don't want to break it. I'll just bend the cable a little bit. I'll leave it dangling here. Now, since we're going to need to install the USB 3.0 header, we're going to go ahead and put the face of the case back on. Okay, so we're just going to slide everything right in here, where it was before. All right, and the front of the case is just going to snap right back into place. Easy enough, right? All right, so now we have all these cables. Now the main one we're going to focus on is the USB 3.0 cable, since we want to connect that first. So I'm just going to go ahead and slide it right through this hole here. All right, and then from up here, just make sure it's nice and tight out of there, and just slide it right in here. Okay, and then right in here, we're going to go ahead and attach the USB 3 cable. You notice there's a little split right over here. That's going to fit in with the split right over here. All right, nice and snug. And now we're just going to put the excess cable right through here. All right, easy enough. And now we're gonna finish off on this part of the video and now move on to the cabling part of the video, which will be part 2 of this video. So see you there. All right, cool. Now that you've got the hardware down, this was part 1. In my next video, I'm gonna show you guys how to cable the machine, how to run all the wires and everything and make everything work. And then towards the end of the video, I'm gonna show you a little mistake I made. Don't worry, it was nothing in this video, something that I did afterwards that I'll show you as well.